Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Reach for Transition webinar entitled Disability and Sexuality, Building Healthy Relationships. This is a two-part series. Part one is today, and we will have a link at the end of this webinar so you can see part two and the link for registering if you'd like. My name is Dawn Monaco, and I am the co-director of the Reach for Transition grant here at SPAN Parent Advocacy Network. So I welcome everyone. Part of SPAN, we collaborate with many of our parent centers in the Northeast Region 1 of parent centers. Peel Parent Center out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is one of our partners, and Katie Smith, who is the Youth Leadership Coordinator, will be presenting on this webinar. Just a few housekeeping. There's a questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen that you can ask questions in there. We will be answering the questions at the end of the webinar. Also, during the webinar, we have several polls. There's about 3 polls that we're going to have because we want to have this interactive as much as possible. So you can go ahead and participate in those polls. This is being recorded, and we will be housing this on our Reach for Transition webpage on the SPAN website. We will be putting that link in the box, the chat box, so that you can access that. And then at the end of the webinar, we will have a link for an evaluation. We ask that if you do, please take some time to tell us what you thought about this webinar. And if you have any thoughts for future webinars, because we're always looking for topics for future webinars. So I'm going to go ahead and once again introduce Katie Smith from the Peel Parent Center. She's the Youth Leadership Coordinator. And thank you, Katie, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dawn. I really appreciate that. I'm very excited to be presenting on healthy relationships. It is such an important piece for everyone, but especially for youth and young adults in transition and for that successful transition to adulthood. So our learning outcomes for today include, but are not limited to, understanding the foundation for healthy relationship, that it lies in having a strong self-awareness and self-respect, identifying characteristics of healthy and unhealthy relationships, and understanding the importance of continually developing that self-confidence and resilience. Those two pieces are essential to being able to transition successfully. We'll also talk about skills and knowledge that you want to have in your backpack as you go through developing relationships. So self-awareness. This is the foundation of building healthy relationships. It's knowing who you are, what you need, and what is important to you. So let's lay that foundation. That self-awareness, you have to know you. And there are different areas that we've included here. So the areas for growth and strengths, we don't talk about weaknesses. That's just areas for growth, things that you can build on, and strengths, and then goals, needs, wants, and desires, ways that you process emotions and coping skills or positive activities that you enjoy, barriers and accommodation, disability and how it affects your life. So these are 5 categories to help you lay that foundation. Now let's provide some questions to help you think about them. So these questions are not all-inclusive, but they're a start, and some of them might apply to you and your youth or young adult that you're working with, but some of them might not. So you can definitely feed off of these ones. So knowledge of disability. Kids need to know what their disability is and what are the characteristics of the disability and how does it affect your life. So for me, my disability, I'm a quadriplegic. I have a spinal cord injury. Characteristics include sensation differences, dexterity differences, needing a wheelchair to get around. So how does that affect my life? How does it affect the way that I learn and the way that I interact with others? Barriers and accommodations. So before we talk about these questions, let's talk about what barriers and accommodations are. Barriers are obstacles or a lack of something that creates a limitation. So an obstacle could be something like steps for me, or a lack of something might be have to do with communication for someone who's nonverbal. An accommodation is something that lessens the effect of that barrier. It doesn't necessarily remove the barrier. But for steps, let's talk about a ramp. Putting a ramp in or an elevator would be an accommodation. And then for as far as communication for someone that's not verbal, an accommodation could be assistive technology like using a Dynavox that would help people, help them to communicate. And then so thinking about these questions, so what creates barriers to participation in activities or learning for me? And we talk about different types of barriers. So barriers that exist are attitudinal, communication, physical, policy, programmatic, social, and transportation. And when you're thinking about barriers, think about these four: communication, physical, program, and transportation. So the way that you communicate and receive information, the way that you get around the physical space, program, so the way that information is provided through programming, and then transportation. And what accommodations work, and what other strategies might work? Where do you use those accommodations? That includes in the classroom or out of the classroom. And who are resources for accommodations? For me, a great resource is the Office of Vocational Rehab to help me figure out what accommodations work and to help me get those provided. Teachers are a great one, friends, peers with similar disabilities. So moving on to goals, needs, wants, and desires. So what are goals for you in and after high school? What do you need in order to accomplish them? And what do I want to do after high school? Careers that interest me. What do I enjoy doing? Why do I enjoy doing these things? And who do I enjoy or work well with? So we have a poll here for goals. So Dawn, go ahead with that.
Okay, it looks like a lot of people have responded. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and share the results.
Could you read the results, Dawn?
Sure. So we have 33% feel that they have 6 or more, that they know they can identify 6 or more. 50% said 3 to 5, and 17% said 1 to 2.
And so another piece of that is the strengths and awareness for growth. So what do I do well, what comes easily, and what is hard for me to do? What skills or areas do I need to work on? So that, like I said, areas for growth we don't want to say weaknesses, because it's something that you can build on. What can you grow with? Rather than weaknesses is more of a negative connotation. And is there another poll for this one, Dawn?
So yes, we have, how confident are you or your young adult, in your preparation level for post-secondary goals?
So the first one was about strengths, and this one is about goals.
Couple more seconds. Okay. So, hitting share. There we go. 29% felt that they have goals and they've got it. 50% feel that they need more time to prepare. 7% said I'm not sure, and 14% said I'm drawing a blank and not ready.
Okay, great. And so that constantly checking back in on that, and what can you do? What would make you feel more confident? What are the pieces that are missing? And asking yourself that, to be aware as you go through with you and the youth, young adults that you're working with. Essential questions of emotions and coping skills. So over here on the side, I have pictures of a girl making in all kinds of faces and emotions. And so are you able to name the feelings that you experience? How does your body feel when you experience them? How do you take care of yourself? So not on here, or what triggers those emotions? What activities do you enjoy and relax you? What environments or people do you feel calm around? And what are easy activities you can do anywhere to help you relax? So activities that you enjoy or relax you. For me, I play wheelchair rugby, so I love getting on the rugby court and crashing into my friends. But that's not necessarily an easy activity that I can cope with. So deep breathing, stretching, drawing, writing, anything. There are so many apps on smartphones or on iPads that you can use. I have one on my phone that's Calm, and it sort of walks you through like an activity or breathing. But I also play little card games on my phone too, and that relaxes me. I don't know if there'll be an accommodation in school, but you can talk about it. Developing a support network. This is huge throughout life. So developing a support network, building and maintaining those healthy relationships can be really hard. So that's why it's important to have a support network, know who they are, what they provide, and when to tap into that network. So remember that relationships often change, and having people that you can rely on for that help, really important. So who are they? What kind of supports do they provide? Examples I have listed here are parents. So the first thing kids might think of are they feed me and they drive me to see my friends. Housing, advice. Parents provide so much more than food and rides, but that might be what kids think of first. And so friends, advice, help with school, and fun. Teachers, help with schoolwork. Also, they provide more than that, but that might be what kids think of. And so an activity that you could do with youth and young adults is draw a circle in the middle of the paper and put the kid's name there. Draw lines that come off of the paper and write down who supports are and what they provide. Map that out. Respect. Aretha Franklin was so right. Respect means having and showing trust and support. You have to give it to get it. That's mutual respect. So respecting yourself means you're allowing yourself the freedom to be who you are. Respecting others means you're allowing them the freedom to be themselves. Having opinions, expressing them, and feeling good about a relationship, the relationship with yourself and the relationships that you have with others. Very important. The ABCs of respect. So the ABCs, this is from one of our resources that's listed at the end. And the A for the ABCs here is awareness. Being aware that you deserve respect, whether or not you are being respected. You deserve it, and that others deserve it as well. Balance is your B. Have mutual respect for the relationships and for one another. So balancing out and being respectful. Choices, making conscious choices that are respectful of yourself and the relationship and whoever else is involved. Reminder, everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and respect, and they are must-haves for healthy relationships. You have to have respect and kindness for one another and for yourself to really develop healthy relationships. That's got to be your baseline. And we don't always remember that or ask for it, really demand it in a safe and healthy way. So, awareness of others. This is often difficult for youth and young adults with different disabilities. So having empathy is understanding and sharing in the emotions of others, and where that might be hard to do, it might be, the next step is that taking a perspective other than your own, thinking about the perspectives of others, and maybe just a checklist of 3 questions where the youth check in on where is this person coming from that you're talking to or having a relationship with. Where do they come from? What have they been through? And smaller questions than that, but what's their take on it? And then allowing others to have personal space and respecting that personal space. So things you can do are consider how others receive information, how others process emotion, how they respond and react to things, and giving cues with body language. So you really need to be aware of how you do those things and be aware of how others do those things. And these are big asks for youth and young adults with disabilities, but it's doable on smaller levels, and working and practicing and really having a lot of check-ins on that. Ranges of relationships. There are 5 different categories of relationships here. So family, friendship, casual relationships, professional, and intimate or romantic. And it's important, this identifies options for who is it. So who are in each of those categories? Your family are your parents, siblings, and uncles, aunts, etc. And how can you tell these people belong in that category type? Because for family, you're related through blood or marriage. And friendships, you enjoy each other without formalities. Casual, those are just connections in the community. Professional, it's a more formal relationship through work. Intimate or romantic, you're deeply attracted to one another and share a special bond that is mutual. Mutual is the key word there. And it's important to note that all relationships are likely to change over time and can be interchangeable. Sometimes people they don't necessarily just fall into one category. I have professional relationships that I would consider friendships as well. And some of my friends, I would lump them in with my family, even though we're not related through blood or marriage. So here we go, activity time. Are you ready? Get excited, you got this. So identifying qualities that are important to you in relationship. What are yours? So right here at the bottom of your pyramid, the big basis of developing healthy relationships, what are your must-have qualities? So pick 4 qualities that are really important to you in relationships. And then we're going to do 3 like-to-haves. So 3 things that you would really like to have in relationships. And then 1 bonus to have. So ready, set, go. These are mine. So 4 must-haves, I would say kindness, trust, respect, and honesty. Those are essential to me. I have to have that. I have to have that kindness. I love being kind and doing fun things, but I have to get it back. I have to feel trust and be able to give trust. I have to be respected, and I really value honesty in all of my relationships. So think about what yours would be. Jot them down on a paper on your desk next to you or on your phone. And then my 3 like-to-haves are humor, equality, and responsibility. I would like things to be equal, an equal give and take in relationships. I would like to have a level of responsibility for our relationship and for activities and things like that. And humor, really, that's a must-have for me, but for some reason I only put 4 in there and I have a lot of must-haves. I might be kind of difficult, but humor is huge. I am dreadfully sarcastic. I love to have fun, and I really need to be able to share that in relationships. And my one bonus have is creativity. I love being creative, whether it's creative play, creative activities, or just finger painting, art, all kinds of things. And if other people don't like to do that stuff, that's okay. I really would like to be able to help your youth and young, do that activity with youth and young adults in your classrooms or at your house and help them think about it. Qualities of healthy relationships. So here are some qualities that I'd imagine some of mine appear here that I used. And this, again, isn't an all-inclusive list at all by any means, but here are things that you might see in healthy relationships. And this is from youth.gov. So this is from youth.gov, and a quality is trust. So accepting each other's words, cooperation, and so quality and what it looks like. Trust is accepting each other's words. It doesn't necessarily have to look like that, or it might look different in your mind. It can look in different ways, but these are just examples. So cooperation, making decisions together, honesty, communicating openly and truthfully, support, offering encouragement, listening without judgment, safety, respecting physical space, effective communication, actively listening, openly sharing, accountability, following through with agreements and promises, and admitting when you're wrong, equality, giving as much as you take, and anger management, utilizing healthy anger management techniques like coping skills. And here are examples of unhealthy relationship qualities. So a lot of these are opposites of the ones that we saw on the last list. And so I have listed here control, hostility, dishonesty, disrespect, dependence, intimidation, physical or sexual violence, and different examples of what they may look like. Someone might make all the decisions and tell others what to do for control. Hostility, picking fights using harsh language. Dishonesty, lying and stealing. Disrespect, making fun of a person's interests, actions, or feelings. Dependence, relying solely on one person for everything. Intimidation, trying to control others through fears or threats. Physical or sexual violence, using physical force or forcing sexual activity without consent. Again, they don't have to look like this. It could be on a smaller level or a larger level. Dishonesty can come in a lot of different ways with a lot of different actions, and these are just examples. Warning signs of unhealthy relationships. When others use verbal insults, mean language, get physical by hurting, tripping, hitting, etc., forcing someone into uncomfortable or unwanted activities, those can be signs of verbal, physical, or emotional abuse. And it's important that if these are things that you see in a relationship with someone else, you should tell someone that you trust and get help, whether it's you, a relationship you're in, or maybe it's something you're seeing in a friend. Tell a teacher, tell a parent, tell someone that you trust and get help with that. More warning signs of unhealthy relationships. Here are some questions that you can ask yourself. And if you answer yes to one, think about it and talk to someone responsible that you trust. Who do you have in mind that you would go to first? Think of somebody. 3, 2, 1. Now, ask yourself, do others get angry when I don't drop everything for them, criticize, make fun of or the way I look, dress, or act, keep me from seeing friends or from talking to others, want me to quit an activity even though I love it, force me to do things that are uncomfortable, ever threaten to physically hurt me. So again, if you answer yes to these, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is an unhealthy relationship that you're thinking about, but it's just something to consider. Important skills to develop. So just like hard skills, you can develop soft skills. It just takes practice, practice, practice. And if you find that your youth or young adult struggle with any of these skills or similar ones, they're perfectly acceptable IEP goals and should be discussed at the IEP meeting. And ones that I have listed here are effective communication, problem solving, conflict resolution, stress management and coping, active listening, decision making, and building rapport. Again, not an all-inclusive list, but here are things to get you thinking about skills that your youth or young adult might need to still work on. Communication and social media, what a big one. So social media, all the rage, everybody's on there. And everybody's so connected all the time, and it's so easy to share things at just the touch of a button or even through voice activation. And so what is appropriate information on Facebook and use whatever thoughts come into their head sometimes. And if you have to think twice about it, don't share it. If you don't feel comfortable with what others are sharing, it's okay to delete them or change the settings for what you view. And so there are different ways that you can change the settings and your preferences, and think about someone that can help you figure that out. So sharing information or how you feel is more effectively done face-to-face, that person-to-person communication. And it's a way to ensure that your thoughts and emotions are understood. Because if you type something out online and share it, you might not be there to help somebody respond or react appropriately to what you're really trying to convey. And if person-to-person communication is hard for you or the youth and young adult that you work with, there are different tools or strategies that you can use to help you out. For example, you can have a note card with main points of what you want to say. You could do video chat. So at least you can see if they start to react, if they start to get really sad about something you said, you can say, oh, no, I don't mean it that way. You could practice with a friend or a teacher or a parent, something like that. There are a lot of different things that you can use. Resilience. Now, again, this is sort of the unwritten skill that really needs to be developed. It's so important because resilience is facing struggles and moving forward with a positive outlook. And you face struggles moving forward through transition for anyone. For a youth or young adult with a disability, there are going to be a lot of bumps in the road where accommodation should be provided and they're not. And meeting people in the street that just don't get you and don't take the time to. And so developing resilience is huge. And resilience through relationships is also huge because, again, relationships are hard. And it's important to have the skills in your backpack to be able to face that and dump those out on the table and use them whenever you need it. How do you develop resilience? Build self-confidence. And to do that, allow yourself and young adults the opportunity to practice those skills and take risks. The dignity of risk, huge thing. Allowing risk to happen and presuming competence to build self-confidence. Having and using coping skills. Not only having them, having that bank of coping skills that you can pull on, but making sure that you utilize them in the moment when they're necessary. Maintaining that positive mindset. And let's talk a little bit more about that positive mindset. Here are different strategies to maintain that. So you can go to family and friends. You can look at positive quotes. You can hug your pets. You can look back at triumphs and accomplishments. Keep a list or a journal and hold on to projects, papers, photographs as reminders of things that have gone really well. And that whatever works for you and keeps you positive. These things can double as coping skills. And this is not an all-inclusive list again, but it's just ideas that can help you, they can help build you up. Rather than just for coping skills, they de-stress you. But I want these strategies that you have in your backpack to build you up, to remind you, yes, I can do this. Yes, I've got this. Yes, I can move forward. So self-acceptance fosters self-confidence. Developing self-confidence starts with accepting who you are. To accept who you are, it goes back to that self-awareness piece, asking those initial questions of self-awareness and knowing who you are, accepting that you are unique and you have something to contribute to society allows you to take risks and build self-confidence. We all bring something unique to the table, something that can pave a way for someone else and that helps pave our way. And you have to allow yourself to share what you have to offer. And you need that confidence to do that, especially having a disability. Sometimes it's hard to share who you are because you really have to put yourself out there, and that's a risk. But it pays off in the end, like this dude doing the handstand. So, coming back to self-awareness. So, self-awareness, again, who you are, what you need, what is important to you, and it's almost like taking all of those self-awareness pieces, and I have them, this little Zen guy doing the tree pose, the yoga pose, and he's balancing all of those things like stacking rocks. And so it's balancing out who you are to be able to move forward successfully. So I'd love to move back to, I'd love for people to share, if they want to, any thoughts that they have about that self-awareness. What are your strengths? What are things that you're aware of? What are goals? You're welcome to type those into the chat box for us to share. I know the way that I process emotions. I sometimes need to separate myself from a situation and de-stress a little bit and just think it through. Sometimes I need to talk it through. I know I have my disability and I understand how it affects my life, and accommodations that I need are physical access, smooth entry. I need accessible transportation, and I often need more time to do activities.
So Katie, this is Dawn. I'll share, and there are some people typing in the chat box, so we can look at that. But well, personally for me, I need to sometimes have time to myself and just regroup and not be around a lot of people. So we have some people typing. I'm going to open up this so I can read it better. Oops, let me see.
Yeah, developing.
I'm aware of my surroundings. I don't know about being around people. Someone said yoga is important to them and keeping a schedule, and they like essential oils.
Ooh, great option.
I need space and time by myself. I'm with you there. Meditation and exercise, someone said.
Oh, it sounds great.
Yeah, I think that's great. A lot of meditation and exercise. It's really important, I think, for everyone.
Does anyone have goals they'd like to share? Because it really comes back to, I really emphasize the self-awareness piece and being self-aware. It comes back to having that solid, positive relationship with yourself before you're able to really be aware of others. It's important to take stock of who you are.
Another person wrote listening to music.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. I'm not much of a music maker though.
I think it's great that there's so many people that do understand that about themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, coming back to our key points.
Let me just say, one other person said, for me, to feel comfortable in a college class with over 15 to 20 students.
Oh, that's a goal. That's a great goal.
Yeah, that is a great goal.
And so, breaking that goal down. So, what are the barriers of that goal, and what are the steps to accommodating that? Is it hard to be in the classroom because of anxiety or something like that, or just going back to making sure that you have small steps, breaking it down. It doesn't have to be one really big leap into that, but it can be climbing that little ladder and taking that path. So key points is understanding that foundation lies in self-awareness and self-respect, knowing who you are and accepting yourself and respecting yourself, giving yourself the respect you deserve, and everyone deserves it no matter what. Identifying and knowing what the characteristics of healthy and unhealthy relationships look like. So identifying what those characteristics are and what they look like, how they present in your life. Understanding the importance of continually developing self-confidence and resilience, giving yourself opportunities to build confidence. Doing the things that you're good at helps build self-confidence, but practicing things you're not as good at, I think, builds confidence even more, because when you put yourself in an uncomfortable or a situation that you're not used to and you're able to successfully go through it, that makes such a difference. It's like that aha moment, like, I can do this. And then that resilience piece of having a positive mindset, confidence, positive mindset, and utilizing coping skills. So moving on, we have our resources listed here. So we have SPAN and Don Monaco at SPAN, fabulous lady. And we have the REACH website, which is on the SPAN website. We have Peel's information. And two of the sources that I used were youth.gov and Teen Topics, and the Sutter Health Palo Alto Medical Foundation is where I found those building blocks and the ABCs of respect and healthy relationships. So that wraps things up on my end. And
wonderful.
Go ahead, Dawn.
So I do see that someone has their hand raised, Iveth. I guess if you could, are you able to put your question in the question box so that we can answer it? Or wondering if we should unmute you?
We can unmute if you want, Dawn, and just unmute Iris and let them share their question, and then remute after that if you care to.
Sure. So I'm going to try to do this. Let's see. I'm not sure if I did do that. It says connect to audio.
You know what, it looks like that person is self-muted as well. So either if you'd like to share your question, we can unmute you, but you also have to unmute yourself, if that makes sense. Or you can feel free to type it in.
Okay, and then it looks like Cindy has a question. There's a question mark there. Go to the question panel, it says.
She just typed in a nice positive comment that it was great info.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and we had another person share about they had some anxiety because they were in home instruction in high school, and that made it really hard to, you know, get back into classes and stuff, I think is what they're saying.
Oh, I'm sure that it made it hard to get back into classes. And you could talk to a therapist about different techniques that would work for you. Specifically, you could talk to, if you're talking about a college setting, you could go to a disability resource center and look at different accommodations. You don't have an IEP in college, but they work out accommodations with you. And so you could sit in the back, you could have a space at the back of the classroom. That could be in accommodations where there is a space for you back there, taking breaks. And so leaving the classroom, coming back, possibly could be an accommodation. So there are different ways to do that on the accommodation school end, but really having different coping skills of your own too, and easing your way back into that, and being forgiving of yourself when it doesn't work out, and really making sure that it's okay.
So do we have any other questions or anything that you would like to bring up and ask Katie about?
Dawn, I'm wondering, this is Janine, I'm just wondering if there's other, some of the information that Katie covered that people are interested in learning more about, or there's some specific topics that would be of interest for future learning. People could share that in the question box too.
Absolutely. And then the evaluations afterwards, if you don't want to do it now, when you fill the evaluation out, there will be an area in that for you to indicate what you'd like to see in future webinars. So while we're waiting to see if anyone has anything, we can discuss the part 2 of this series. Katie, I think you have that on a slide. Here we go. So on Tuesday, June 12th, we're going to continue this discussion of this topic, disability and sexuality. And we're going to move from building healthy relationships to navigating sexuality. It's not something that's always easy to talk about, but we have a wonderful presenter, Sean McGill. She has her own consulting agency, which is Sean McGill Consulting. She was actually recommended to us from the Peel Parent Center. Janine Brinkley, who's the executive director there, Janine, I know you could speak if you'd like about your experience with Sean. I know that you speak very highly of her.
Sure. And actually, there's a question here too about sexuality and some things about sexual abuse, and I think those would probably be questions that Sean will definitely address and could answer more appropriately and with more confidence. Sean has her own agency. She's worked in the field a long time. She is really skillful at working with youth and young adults, and actually up through adulthood, people in thinking about sexuality, in addressing challenges, and working with families and their youth or young adults to think through some of these things that can be challenging to address, especially if a person needs, like Katie said, if you have somebody who for speaking is a challenge, then you can imagine that figuring out how to talk about and teach about sexuality is a really important thing. And I also do want to mention, if there's a person who has a specific question about sexuality or sexual abuse that you are having right now, you can contact Stan or Peel There's contact information in the PowerPoint, and we can get someone to speak with you individually if it's something that's more urgent and you don't want to wasn't more general question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we have another comment here, Dawn, too. Laura shared that she finds she has to remind her 27-year-old who has high-functioning autism to be patient and kind with friends on the phone, especially when he feels a phone call interrupts his day. Any pointers on how she could help support him to learn that more effectively? Katie, do you have any ideas about that, being patient with friends on the phone? If not, I'm sure we can brainstorm some other ones.
I think being patient with friends on the phone, if a phone call isn't always the best, they could have text at certain points during the day. He could let his friends know that, during this time of the day, send me a text, but if you want to call me in the evening, we can talk then. And maybe just has, 3 reminders. Remember to breathe while friends are talking, or even have something a fidget toy or something. When you're on the phone, know that you grab your squeeze ball so you can squeeze it while you're talking to friends and listening to them. And because it's important to allow people to communicate with you as much as it's important to communicate with others, that mutual respect. So I don't know if that helps, but that's a couple ideas.
Yeah, another thought I had, Katie, was that, if you feel like a phone call is interrupting your day, it's okay not to answer it unless the person leaves a voicemail message and then call them back later. And maybe also even just explaining to your friends that, it's difficult to have your schedule interrupted. And so if you could sort of plan, it's better for me to receive phone calls between like 6 and 7 in the evening or something, I feel comfortable answering them, because it's also, there are times when people call me and I push the button to send a message instead of answering. Usually it's because I'm busy with something else, but it might be a time when I say, I just don't really feel like talking right now, and I think that's okay too.
Right.
Exactly. It's absolutely okay to not feel like talking or talking to certain people. That's fine. You're definitely to, allow yourself that.
And I think we find too with certain disabilities, things go better when there is more structure and more of a schedule. So, and if that's what works for someone, then they can say, like you said, let it go to voicemail. And then every day at 7 o'clock at night, I will listen to my voicemails and answer them. And maybe if there's more structure, it won't be so annoying.
Very good.
There's also a question, Dawn, about somebody missed a lot of this because she was busy taking care of her daughter, but it is being recorded, right? And people will be able to access it.
I'm not seeing the questions that you're seeing, so I apologize because this is a new format that we're using. So I'm probably doing something, and that's why I'm not seeing them. So thank you, Janine. Yes,
Sure.
Absolutely. This is being recorded, as do all of our Reach webinars. And I believe we did put the link. It's actually right here as well. We put it in the chat box earlier. All of our webinars are recorded. We do at least 4 webinars a year. They're all recorded and they're all put up on our Reach page on the SPAN website. So you can find them there if you missed part of this webinar, for sure. So, and I do want to remind everyone that there will be, when you close out, you'll see an announcement with a link to an evaluation. Please, we really would appreciate it if you could take the time to fill that evaluation out, because we really do listen to what you have to say about our webinars. And a lot of these topics that we present come from the evaluations, as well as our meetings with other parent centers in the region. And this particular topic was something that we've been discussing for a while now, so we're so happy to be able to bring it to you. And we realize there's so much information around disability and sexuality that we broke it up into 2 parts. And we wanted to start with building healthy relationships, because as Katie says, it really begins with our own feelings about ourselves. And then, and thank you, Katie, that was wonderful. I think she brought a lot of great ideas and information and activities that can be done. And then we will take it to the next step where we will have navigating sexuality, which, I mean, I'm a parent. So as parents, that could be a very difficult topic for us because we don't always want to see our young adults as sexual beings, but they are. And it's really important for everyone to understand that topic and that there are lots of professionals out there who can talk to it. So as Katie showed on this PowerPoint, which is in the handout section, you can download that. There is Katie's contact information, my contact information, and when Sean McGill does her presentation, she will have her contact information. So anything you think of later on that you may want to ask, please reach out to us, and if we can't answer it for you, we will guide you to the right people that can answer it.
Absolutely.
And I also put the link in the chat box for everybody to see, the link where you can find your parent center. So if you're from a state that's not Pennsylvania or New Jersey and listening in, every state has a parent training and information center. And if you go to this link, you'll be able to easily find that center. And all the centers provide training and individual assistance to families.
Absolutely. Thank you, Janine, for thinking of that. That's absolutely. We never know who's exactly on the webinar, so there could be people in other states. So thank you so much. I didn't think of that. So unless there's any other questions, we will be ending the webinar. Once again, I want to thank Katie, Katie Smith and Janine Brinkley from Peel, and also Janine Schultz and Kelly King. We all worked together to put this PowerPoint together for you. So thank you so much to our collaborators at the Peel Parent Center. And again, if you need any information, please reach out and you'll find our website has the webinars there. Give us a little time. Once the webinar is downloaded, we will be putting it up on the site. So thank you so much for joining us. And we hope that you'll be able to join us on part 2 of this disability and sexuality series. Thank you, Katie.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dawn. Everyone have a great day.